which is hosted by the interns at the UW Madison Office of Sustainability. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. And the theme tonight is food systems.
Is it up to me?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Norma. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, everyone. My name's Jackie. I'm with the Office of Sustainability. And I just wanted to start off tonight with a land human history acknowledgement. And I want to apologize because I will not be able to capture the whole picture, the entirety of the issue, or the full history in this statement, nor offer a solution to repair all of the damage done. But this is an extremely important issue to me and our office, and something that nonetheless, I would like to recognize. So I would like to recognize the sovereignty of the 12 First Nations that reside within the boundaries of the state of Wisconsin. Many of us were taught human history in the American school system. And the way that we were taught that started around 1492, which is vastly inaccurate and not close to the truth. So if we have any environmental landscape enthusiasts with us tonight, you may know that about 15,000 years ago, a big, massive glacier receded and left the land of Wisconsin and our country that we all walk and live on now. So about 15,000 years ago, when that glacier receded, is when the first native humans inhabited this land. So there's about 13 to 15,000 years of history of living in America that we weren't. And the city of Madison specifically, and the UW-Madison campus, was once inhabited by the Ho-Chunk Nation before colonialism. And the city of Madison was a village that the Ho-Chunk Nation called Tejope. And tribal leaders from all over the land of Wisconsin would gather and meet right where the state capital currently is. I want to recognize the history of extreme violence and oppression and removal against First Nations globally, in this country, and in the state of Wisconsin. I know people may be joining in from all over the country, so wherever you are, there is a history of forceful, violent removal. And I would also just like to recognize that cultural property and knowledge is invaluable. You can't put a price on it. It is priceless. And I want to leave you with these questions that were posed to me at an event that was hosted by a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation a couple years back that you can sit with and consider going forward. If we removed all of the everyday conveniences that we have, like air conditioning, grocery stores, phones, cars, would you be able to survive here in Tejope? How long do you think that you could survive? If we all tried at once, what would happen? What would we eat? What fish would we eat? And how would we catch them? And how would we know what parts of the plant we could eat? What about medicine? How would we track animals still? And how would you build your house or insulate it? That is all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Again, we are the Office of Sustainability, and we want to acknowledge the lack of diversity both within our team and our office, which is almost entirely white. This reflects a larger trend across campus and in mainstream environmentalism, in which the necessary and valuable voices of BIPOC who have long led the fight to protect our communities and environment are excluded. So we created this series in an effort to recenter these voices within our own campus community. In addition, we believe that it's important to acknowledge that sustainability is not just about the environment, but it's also tied to social and economic factors and influences. We hope that this series will help illuminate those facets of sustainability. So for today's panel, we have two guest speakers, Vilas and Robert. Each panelist will tell us a little bit more about themselves and their works for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will allow questions from the audience. So feel free to send any questions to the Q&A section. So yeah, so To begin, we have Alfonso Morales, and he is originally from New Mexico with family roots in farming and ranching. He is a UW-Madison Vilas Distinguished Achievement Professor in the Department of Planning and Landscape Architecture, with affiliations in Chicanx and Latinx Studies, Sociology, CIAS, and UW Extension. His research includes food systems, public marketplaces, street vendors, and is applied to support nonprofits, including his co-created farmstofacts.org toolkit for the Farmers Market Managers and Cave Kaufman Lab. So I'll give it over to him.
Unmute yourself, Professor Morales. Sure, I can do that. Thank you very much, Norma, Jackie, Jason, Brooke. I really appreciate that kind invitation me to join you all this evening. I want to acknowledge all the folks in the audience. It's a great pleasure for me to get to visit with you, and I'm really looking forward to the questions. So that biography is accurate. You'll see I'm about the only person around campus who wears a cowboy hat. And I have 4 of them. So keep your eyes open. It's still me, even if it's a different color or different material. My family's been farming and ranching in West Texas and New Mexico for more than 100 years. So I can't help but acknowledge our ancestors. So my ancestors are also people that I'm always happy to acknowledge. And I've been a professor now for about 25, 26 years. And I have gotten up in front of crowds as many of 1,000 people or more in Canada, Berlin, Milan, Washington, Berkeley, here in town, etc. And I always have started, Buenas tardes, ¿cómo les ha ido? I like to just say to folks, I can greet you in more than one language as well. And I wish and I hope that you all can as well. Because when we can speak more than one language, whatever that might be, sign language or any other form of communication, that communication is vitally important to making not only our intentions known, but consuming other people's intentions, interacting with them, engaging them in dialogue. So when I think about food and I think about my biography, I can't help but think about the fact of farming and ranching. And in the work that I did growing up, my mother is 89 years old and now lives with my sister after our father died. And she sent a bunch of photo albums. and there's pictures of them in there with me wrestling pigs and butchering animals and doing all kinds of things that with reference to the land acknowledgement. It's whenever I was in graduate school at the University of Chicago, I used to tell people I hunted and fished, and they said, "What? You have a gun?" Now, life is complicated, folks. Life is truly complicated, and there are many ways forward. But if we're not communicating with each other, we're going to miss those ways forward. So I just shared that little bit of biography from a farm in New Mexico to New Mexico State University, working for a few years with refugees from Eritrea and Vietnam, graduate school, more graduate school, more graduate school. In Chicago, at the University of Chicago Northwestern, I finally finished my PhD, and I started being a professor. And the thing that engaged me the most was working with communities in identifying their goals. And I was particularly happy to get to work with communities of color, not because I feel like they're more human or less human or insufficiently represented, even though they are, even though your acknowledgement acknowledges the fact of our underrepresentation here on this campus. Not for those reasons, but for a simple reason that anybody could recognize. And that was our shared humanity and the fact that their goals are society's goals. we have a common interest in the country to advance the prospects for everyone. Where people are unable to advance their prospects, the country loses out. Our entire society loses out. So in my life, I've been very fortunate in 6 books and 100 articles and $15 million of grants and contracts to work regularly with communities of color in supporting them in identifying their goals, particularly with respect to foods, and in particular with respect to vendors and farmers markets and urban agriculture, things that I have cared deeply about and written about all my professional life. So let me give you 3 examples of that work from different parts of my life, okay? In Chicago, there was a very big street market called the vendors on a given Sunday in this big street market near the Loop in Chicago, 2 miles away from what's now called the Willits Tower, the Sears Tower back then. 1,000 vendors organizing access to vending space without government, without anybody telling them what to do or how to do it. They did it themselves, despite what would look like to be a war of everybody against everybody. A lot of times people think we need regulation, we need laws, we need ordinances, and we do. However, we also need to rely on people's common sense and their ability to identify mutually achievable goals. I saw people, my dissertation, I was a vendor, and I wrote my dissertation about the market and showed how different groups of people, even that didn't share the same language, could organize vending space in the market without the interference of government or without the support of government, whichever way they had different perspectives about government. In the middle of my career, I worked a lot with farmers markets, direct market agriculture. And one of the things that I discovered with farmers was, one, they were like the farming that I did. They were risk averse, but if you gave them a good bet, they would take it and run with it. And that would always be exciting to be supportive of them. And so I created a toolkit for farmers market managers that's used in the United States and Canada and supports farmers markets and direct market agriculture in a number of different ways. Now, let me return again to the idea of sort of ancestry and something that I do administratively and professionally. A professor in my department 30 years ago was a guy named Jerry Kaufman. He introduced food system planning to the field of urban and regional planning. And he was my neighbor. I live in the Hill Farms neighborhood. We lived about 4 blocks apart. We were friendly. And I met him after he'd been retired for many years. And when he passed away, the first thing I did was created the lab. I created it in his name to honor his interest in our common humanity with special attention to women, people of color, other underrepresented groups, irrespective of gender identity or otherwise. Our shared humanity, folks. So in that work, I often do work on law and regulation in support of communities of color to get access to land, to farmland within cities or resources within cities, or to navigate the difficulties of city ordinances. So I've helped change the law in a number of places around the country. I guess most prominent is New York City, as that's a prominent example, Atlanta, but lots of different cities. And so if socially we can't engage with each other, then legally we can have recourse to each other. But I think that the law should only follow our best good faith efforts to engage each other, demonstrate our shared humanity, and try and identify goals we can advance and achieve together. Now, of course, this is going to vary across time and place, but there you go. I hope that this gives you some idea of the work that I've been doing. I will be happy to talk further about it down the road in the Q&A, but right now I'm excited to turn this over to my friend of many years here in town, Robert Pierce. However you see fit, Norma, to do that, please go ahead. Thank you, folks, for your attention.
So again, if you guys have any questions, I'd like to introduce Robert Pierce, who is a Lamar Billups awardee, and he's also a Madison native and a longtime food advocate and farmer. He manages the South Madison Farmers Market, founded the program for entrepreneurial agricultural training, and leads neighborhood food solutions and farming after incarceration release. Robert not only brings healthy local food to Madison, but ensures that people have the skills they need to sustain themselves and their communities. So, Robert, take it away.
I'm unmuted now. Okay. Thanks a lot for that intro, Alfonso.
You bet, Robert. Good to hear your voice, buddy.
That's good to be heard. We worked around with some of the same people. I remember Jerry Kaufman myself, which was a great man. He helped me out with a lot of, the things of bringing this urban ag is, might say, is my pet peeve. I believe that urban ag is the new, it's the new farming for BIPOC, since we don't have the money to buy, massive land and the way the systems have played out, we don't have that type of money or able to get that type of stuff. So I think urban ag is very important for BIPOC. As a young man in Madison, my grandmother, we lived on South Madison, which has always been a food desert. And growing up there, it was like everybody had a garden. We didn't know we were poor because we always had good food. So we always had gardens. We lived close to the Coliseum at that time, and Coliseum wasn't there. So we had about 5 acres of land that my grandmother would get someone to plow it up, and would grow food. And we would always, she was canning all the time and on this, making, things out of the gardens and stuff. And as a young man, she made me go to other people's farms or other people's gardens and weed and help the elderly take care of their gardens and stuff. So after 18, I decided that I would join the Marine Corps. So I went and did my bit in the Marine Corps and came out and came home. And I noticed at the time that, before going in, and which was, 3 years prior, everyone was healthy. All of my grandmother's peers were all healthy. But right before I left out of here, the first McDonald's in Wisconsin was put on South Madison, right in my neighborhood. And I mean, come on now, at those times, 25 cents cheeseburger, 10 cents for fries and a Coke, $1 you could be filled up, So I can remember that, how all my grandmother's peers had stopped growing food and I came home. And their health started deteriorating. And I don't know what happened. Somehow I had an allergy to certain chemicals and stuff that were in food and stuff. So I had to be very careful about what I was eating and kept going to the hospital. They never knew what was going on. And, you might be allergic to this or you might be allergic to that. And so it came to a point. I was at Madison Business College one day and I broke out. I ate something and broke out in these hives. And so I needed to finish this test before I went to the hospital. So when I got to the hospital, the doctor said, "Don't ever do that again." I said, "What?" He said, "When you have an allergy like this, you stop what you're doing. You get here. You could, you could have died." And so it's just like, oh, okay. Here's a rude awakening. That what am I going to do now? So I had to evaluate a business. which is called Metro Grow, and ended up at this big giant farm, 2,000-acre farm, and the elderly guy, the farmer that was there, he was telling me about how the human body was an amazing machine, but it couldn't break down tomato seeds. And I'm going, okay, yeah, all right, And so he goes, well, look. I looked out this field, 2,000 acres, and there's tomatoes growing everywhere. And all of a sudden, it's like this big truck pulls up, and these claws hit the ground, and they start tearing up the soil, and they're putting human waste in the field. And I'm going, wow. And so at that time, it became, all right, now I know what I had to do. So my wife was pregnant with my first son. And so I decided I was going to get 5 acres of land and start growing food. And I got this land that had been working over 50 years. And before that, there was an old Russian guy who grew potatoes on it during World War I and II. And so the guy who owned it kept going, what's that you're going to do? I said, I'm going to grow food organically. He said, well, what's that? I said, I'm going to grow food without poison. He says, and you're in a business college? And I says, yeah. And he said, don't look like you're thinking. So he kept on with this, every couple of weeks he'd pop up, says, what are you doing? And I tell him what I was doing. He says, what's that you're going to do? I says, I'm going to grow food organically. He says, well, you're still at that school? I says, yeah. I said, well, don't look like you're thinking. And so one day I went into class and was talking to one of the teachers, and he says, Robert, he says, you're ahead of your time. He says, you need to get out of here and go live your dream. So I decided at that time that I decided to take this 22.5 acres and decided to do an organic business. That I started half the 40 acres organic farming. And, people go, well, at that time, there was something new and different. This is 1983. And so they looked at me and said, well, you're not going to make very much money. If you're farming, you're not going to make very much money. And I go, well, maybe I'll just be happy. I says, it's not, money's not only the bottom line here. I says, maybe I just want to be happy. And so it came to a point that I became selfish because I knew that I could grow food for myself and not break out, these different allergies. And couldn't trust anyone else to do that for me, so I did it myself. But then when I became the manager of South Madison, it was like not only become the manager, they had the University of Wisconsin plus a few other organizations, Prevention for Hunger, and a few other different groups had discerned that South Madison was a food desert and that it needed to have access to fresh food, safe food. And so they created a farmers market. And the first year, the lady who was the market manager, she had about 2 or 3 visits to people in the market. And so she asked if I would join the market. And which was like at the same time I was creating different businesses for myself and starting up small markets in other different areas around Madison. And so it was like, okay, I can go back to my home spot here and help out. And I had started, at a time of helping out my grandmother's peers. I was creating different packages for them. I would run by and, was happy with all the stuff that I was growing, and I would always get this seal of approval of how good my stuff was. And they would say, boy, you can't keep giving this to us. You got to sell it to us. And so I created a package that I called it was like a market basket, but it was like small amount of different types of ethnic greens and things that they liked that that they weren't growing anymore, but they wanted it, but it was too expensive to buy in the stores and stuff. So I grew it, and I would offer them a package once a week with enough food in it to that they could cook, 3 or 4 meals out of it. I charged them $5 for it, so they enjoyed it, and it helped them out through through the week and stuff of being able to get different food that was healthy and nutritious for them. And as time passes on, we started working with Growing Power for about 15 years, and we brought market basket systems to Madison, Wisconsin, also with the help of the University Slow Foods and other different avenues that we were working from the Center for Resilient Cities and stuff like that, which I worked at a school and stuff. And we started just making sure that South Madison we tried to fortify it with safe, affordable food. And from the markets, our market was known as a market that you don't make very much money because they don't. Those are poor people. But poor people just as well as rich people. I mean, I've always thought. So for a long time, I wouldn't certify my vegetables because people knew, that what I was doing. It was more of a trust thing that I knew that he wasn't going to put poison in it because he doesn't, he doesn't do that. It's just something he doesn't do. And so they respected that. And then it's to a point, it's like, okay, it's about time. I started now that I'm working with different groups. Now we're working with Groundswell Conservatory, which they presented me with 37 acres to work on. And working my programs, the PEAT program, PEAT stands for Program for Entrepreneurial and Agricultural Training, where we teach young adults, youth at risk, how to make soil, how to be able to grow different vegetables, and then take that. We teach them one day of a week on the Fridays. They're out of the fields in a class where they teach them how to do marketing, spreadsheets, and how to set up a business, at a farmer's market where they sell their vegetables at. And same thing with the FAIR program, Farming Active Incarceration and Release, helping them to get back on the track of being able to give back to society, plus also being able to take care of helping them growing things to themselves to be able to feed their family, to make money to be able to pay for those different bills that they have, because it's really hard at that point of having that label of felon and not being able to get a job, and trying to help bring back the community, giving it upliftment, because at this particular time, it's going to get harder as long as we have this COVID, this COVID thing going on right now. The only thing that we can do is help each other to eat better and to be healthy. So with that, is there anything else? I'm looking forward to some of these questions too. And I hope I don't have to throw them back over here and give them to Alfonso to help out. So back to you guys now. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. So as mentioned before, will now open up to discussion for audience questions. So if you have a question, please send it using the QA box found in the bottom right corner of your screen. But I have a question. So to both of you, how can an individual fight for food justice? And Alfonso, if you'd like to answer first.
Sure. Let me just tag on to what Robert just said. Robert wanted to fight for food justice for formerly incarcerated people. And so he wanted to, so he determined, he was both determined and he determined that this was a totally underserved population, that working with that population would ramp up, the learning curve would be steep, but the benefits could be steep. So what did he do? As an individual, he said, he identified the things that he could do. He could train people to farm. He could help them identify good work habits. He could help them rebuild a sense of identity and a sense of themselves. But he needed some support. So as an individual, what did he do? He reached out to campus. And what did we do? He and I worked together and we wrote a Baldwin Idea Grant and paid for that was in part supportive of that event, for a couple of years, helped launch that formerly incarcerated individuals farm project. So as individuals, I think this highlights two things, right? His story highlights two things. One, ask yourself who is it that you want to work with? And then ask yourself, don't make assumptions, but ask yourself clearly and identify the assumptions you or others make about that population. Oh, those people, they're incorrigible. They can't be redeemed. They can't be. Question those assumptions. Just because somebody has a judgment against them doesn't mean that judge. Right. Society needs all of us. We can work together. So question yourself and what you want to do, and question assumptions that people make about each other. That's first answer.
Are you looking at me here or what?
Go ahead, Robert. Yeah, do you want to tag on in any way?
I want to tag on to that. It's like, that grant that you guys gave me was a start. And what it did was it helped to tag on to other different groups that believe the same thing. That they believe that that everybody needs a second chance. Like with this revolving door that they have on BIPOC people. It's like, come on, man, you got to give them, at some point, you got to give them a chance to be able to make some type of amends. So if you keep throwing men out of these prisons and warehouses, how are they going to ever, come back into society? And if you're looking at trying to find a way of helping out food systems, picking out a group. And I chose young adults because this world is going to become theirs. When we're done and finished with this, it's on to them. And to teach them, that food is a very important aspect of your life. I mean, you don't eat it, you die. And if you're not eating, and one of the main things or one of the main reasons that people are dying is because of bad food. So it's a way of teaching people how to eat good food and help to prolong the life and also the longevity of a community. So I think that you have to take a choice or make a choice and stand up and decide who and where you want to help out in this. And on top of that, since I'm a farmer, I believe that everybody should have their own garden. Let's start with it. Especially an urban garden.
We have a question from the Q&A, and it's from Carissa, and she says, how do you think the community buying their food directly from farmers through markets, rather than the grocery store where you are very distant from the supply, helps customers connect with their food and appreciate the environment it came from?
Well, I think that knowing your farmer is number one. I think that's the most important thing you could do is, know your food's coming from and who's growing that food. I have people who will come up to me and ask me, hey, can you grow me this? Can you grow me that? And it's like, it's that connection, that they have so much, faith that, hey, well, maybe we can have Robert or have someone from the farmers market grow this for us, and, we also help out with a lot of different restaurants that buy from us local. Plus, we have a store here that buys all my stuff. I mean, sure, they have all of my stuff, and it's like, that's one of the, I think that's one of the most essential ways of being able to help out is buying from farmers markets or from places that your farmers are taking stuff to.
So I can't agree with Robert more on this. I think Carissa and Norma, thank you for your questions, first of all. Uh, Second of all, it's true that the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food program of the USDA has been really important in helping people go from what people call heads down consumption. In the grocery store, your head is down, you're just reaching for stuff, to heads up consumption, where what you're consuming is not just the groceries from the farmers market, but you're consuming the entire place. You're getting a sense of the neighborhood, of your neighbors, of the activities that the market provides, of the neighboring businesses and the interaction there between those businesses or other activities located on the site. So I think it's very important to acknowledge that heads up, that knowing your neighbors, right? Knowing your neighborhood, uh, getting a sense of your community. Those are many of the benefits that come from direct market agriculture, purchasing directly from farmers markets or community supported agriculture farms. I follow this subject, and many farmers markets did extraordinary business during COVID. Many suffered, but many did a lot of business because people were interested in buying local. They wanted to know, as Robert said, they wanted to know where their food was coming from. They wanted to know whether it was poisonous or not, in the way Robert describes it. How organic or naturally produced was the food. So Carissa, I really think that that's a good question, but it has one other part that I want to address real quick. The reason why grocery stores, maybe some of you have heard of redlining neighborhoods for housing discrimination. So we're going to redline this neighborhood because we don't want to make loans to homes in this neighborhood, and so the neighborhood goes down. Likewise, I have documented in research grocery store redlining, where grocery stores are kept out of communities of color. And so fewer food choices it's devastating. If you're restricted to more expensive food choices that is less quality, less nutrition, you're just contributing to public health disasters like type 2 diabetes and other sorts of health problems in communities. These things are connected together. These things are connected together. And so awareness of them is very important in order to break the cycle. Now, in my view, I wish everybody used farmers markets, but they don't. Grocery stores are not going to go away. But we can make sure that grocery stores act fairly with respect to communities of color. We can work to try and indicate that BIPOC communities, people of color, are just as human as everybody else. Their dollar is just as green as anybody else's dollar. And so, anyhow, I'm better. I hope that addresses your question, Chris. I'm happy to tag back on.
We have a question from Gwen, and she asks, how has small local farming changed in the past 10 years? What do you both predict it will look like in the next 5 to 10 years? And do you believe it's becoming more accessible and inclusive? I know it's such 3 questions.
You want to go first, Robert? Go ahead. Or do you want me to? Doesn't matter.
Well, all right. I can. Well, for me, it's like I just took a job working with NCRS, which was Natural Resource and Conservation Service, and which working on BIPOC, being able to help people of color find out ways of being able to work with the USDA and get some of these benefits that are out there. I think that, as I stated before, I think that BIPOC and urban ag it's a way of being able to do this because of the fact that I don't know any person of color that it's got 200, 300 acres that their grandmother's going to hand down to them, or their grandfather's going to hand over to them. I don't know anyone. So
besides me, Robert.
oh well, besides Alfonso.
But anyways, your point is well taken.
I'm sorry, I know you. There's one. But other than that, very few people that I know, that can do that. And so learning how to do urban ag and feeding your own soil, I think is going to be an important part of bringing a system to low income and people of color. We have our community gardens and stuff, but there's very few people of color that are actually in those community gardens. One of the reasons is because they're working 2 or 3 jobs. They don't have time to do that. So it's like I think that as a point, that urban ag is probably going to be a way of being able to help out with this situation. What do you think?
So I agree with Robert. I mean, the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, defines anybody who makes more than $500 a year as a farmer. If you make $500 a year growing food, you're a farmer from USDA's perspective. And having folks like Robert working for NRCS, National Resource Conservation Service, is very important. That office, that USDA office, works around the country in support of farmers in order to help establish management practices and a host of other things. And we need that support. So I'm going to draw a curve with my hand. In 1900, there were this many farmers. They started going down and down and down and down. 1950, pretty close to now 2% of the population is farming, right? Latino farmers, right? Of new farmers, the Latino farmers are increasing. Black farmers, just a little bit, kind of up and down, up and down. Urban agriculture is a vitally important way to engage African American or Black communities, of whether they're historically underrepresented or recent immigrants. Urban agriculture is vitally important, and 10 years ago, there were very few jurisdictions that cared enough. 30 years ago, there were very few jurisdictions that cared enough to establish ordinances and support community gardens and urban farmers with the legal right to farm and the resources to support farming. My research, I've written about this in different jurisdictions. In Kansas City, helped change the law in Kansas City to establish urban farming regulations that were friendly to everybody who wanted to farm, BIPOC included, as well as other jurisdictions around the country. And in the next 10 years, I think now at this point, we see cities. One of my doctoral students, she has looked at all the ordinances for every city of more than 5,000 people in Michigan, and she's writing an article about that research, showing how it is different cities are dealing with urban agriculture. So one, we need enabling ordinances. I think this is a really good question. In order for urban agriculture to have a real future, we need enabling ordinances. Law has to be in support, because law protects urban farmers from people who say, oh, they're just making a mess. They're just dirty. They're just, what they're doing is terrible. Because there's always going to be people like that. So folks need some protection. They need resources, right? And then they need markets. So Robert's fortunate that he has a number of markets. I buy his products at the co-op there on Regent Street, the Regent Street Co-op. But not everybody, it's not always easy to get market. To get somebody to purchase your stuff. And Robert, it took time for him to break into some markets. And people need the ability to process their food into value-added products, and they need to be able to sell into supply chains. So I could go on about this. I've done quite a bit of research on the question of supply chains, but I think that when you have an important question, the future could be bright if we start connecting these dots. We need professionals connecting these dots, connecting law and opportunity and markets and processing, value-added products like like what happens here at the Northside Feed Kitchen. If you're not familiar with the Northside Feed Kitchen, look it up. Okay, next question. Go ahead.
Yeah, so kind of going off of that, Jim asks, what is the biggest barrier to success of beginning BIPOC farmers in your eyes?
Robert, do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
You go first.
Okay. So there's two. There's two, Jim. I'm sorry that I can't just identify one, because there's two. One of them is the household itself. I've done a lot of research on gender, women's opportunities to be entrepreneurs, and nobody says to be farmers. If you look at the blogs that I do at Farm to Facts and Facebook, farmtofacts.org, our blog page, we highlight women farmers. Every few weeks, we have women farmers up there, and we have BIPOC farmers up there, because I think it's just vitally important for folks around the country to see women farmers from around the country. And so one thing is we've got to we've got to look at people. We can't help but look at people and make some judgments. You can't help it. But what you can do is be aware that you're doing it. I have to be aware, okay? Everybody has to be aware of the judgments that they make. And when we become aware of those judgments, we can begin to address the pernicious problems that those judgments introduce. So one answer to your question is, first of all, is there could be very stark reasons people don't think of themselves as farmer, and they have to do with gender stereotypes or other stereotypes. Second big barrier that I think exists is simply a vision of what's possible. If I asked, I don't know how many folks in the audience here are in college, but I'm going to assume many of you are. Okay? And when I teach classes, next semester I'm teaching here at the University of Wisconsin a class called Marketplaces and Entrepreneurship. And in that class, it's April 411. In that class, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to ask everybody, how did you know to come to the university? How did you know you were going to go to college? How did you know? And for most people, it was just a habit. It was just expected of them. They didn't make a choice, right? It was just what they were given to do. So if you're not given to do something positive, oftentimes you're going to find something negative. And it's very important to foster positive visions in people's lives. And I think that's one of the things that I try and do, and I know it's one of the things Robert tries to do as well. So I know that's kind of a tough answer for you, Jim, because I'm not signaling the structural barriers that do exist. But one of those structural barriers is the absence of opportunities to see yourself engaged in things that people wouldn't otherwise see you engaged in. Okay, go ahead, Robert. Take her away.
For me, I think my greatest barrier has been color. It's like, I remember when I first started doing this, I used to go every Halloween. I would go to the kids' fight. I was a single parent with 5 kids, and I would always go to the kindergarten class and bring in pumpkins and talk to the kids about different types of vegetables and fruits and stuff. And one particular time when I think it was my middle daughter. It was her class. And when I walked in, this young little African American kid looked at me and he kept staring at me. And I'm like, oh, and I'm talking, giving the spiel and stuff. And I said, are there any questions? And he threw his arm up so fast I thought he was going to break it. And he said, you ain't no farmer. I said, what? He said, you ain't no farmer. I said, well, why am I not a farmer, young man? He said, because you wearing FUBU. So we have this imprinted vision of what a farmer is supposed to be. He's supposed to be a white man with a straw hat and bib wears, overalls and stuff. It's like, my son gives me, Jordans, and I wear them on my tractor, and they're comfortable. so I think that, we have to change the perception of what you think a farmer is, first of all, And like I said, I'm a farmer first. Before I'm any of these other things, I'm a farmer, And I remember I had a chance to have dinner with Michael Pollan, and he wrote the book, Dilemma, I'm a Horse Dilemma. And we were at one of the expensive restaurants downtown, and I came in. It was like the first time that people had seen me in a suit in many years. And so I'm sitting here with Michael, and we're talking. And so people were coming up saying hello to him and shaking his hand. And they go, are you the dean of such and such and so-and-so? And I go, no. And they go off about their business. And someone else would come up. I'm the only African American in the place now. And but they happened to know that there was a African American professor, and he was a male, and they thought it was me. That I was that guy. And so when Michael said he got up and he spoke, he says everyone came to this table, and they wanted to know Mr. Pierce and who is he? He said, well, Mr. Pierce has a very important job. He's a farmer. And he says, if it wasn't for farmers, you wouldn't have the food that you have on your table right now. And he made that point, that I was just as important as these doctors and these, this dean and stuff they were looking for. So, like I said, you need to change that perception of what a farmer is, So that's all I had to say about it.
Yes. Alfonso, I know you have to leave at 8. Do you have time for one more? If not, we can just wrap up.
Sure. As a matter of fact, I was mistaken. I actually have time.
Oh, okay.
Because
okay.
I had my undergraduate class. I'm teaching a COVID class this semester, and the class met last night because I wanted to get everybody in the room, and so last night we met at 8 p.m. So I actually have time. So thank you for your concern.
Cool.
But go ahead.
All right. Yes. So Monica asked a question: what federal policies are most impactful to your work, and what changes at the federal level would make a positive impact on food systems and BIPOC leaders in food systems?
So that's a really good question. So Monica, that's a good question. There's a number of different answers to that. A selfish answer, okay, for myself, is support for direct market agriculture. So the more money that's put into local food programs, agricultural marketing service, farmers market promotion program, the organic program at USDA, the better, selfishly speaking. I think that's representative of a number of different groups around the country, but I have worked with groups that have gotten that grant funding from those guys, from those folks, from those programs, and they are woefully underfunded. And I've sat on review panels for those grant programs, and we turn away dozens of deserving, excellent applications. So those programs need much more funding. I think generally speaking, in order to support BIPOC farmers, we need to adopt a different attitude about measurement. People say, so if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember the philosopher who said this, but I'm kind of a little bit sick, and so my brain's not working very well. But you measure what you care about. I can't remember, but the point is that we measure what we care about, and what USDA cares about is dollars and cents. So we need to move away from caring solely about dollars and cents and caring instead about things that are more difficult to measure but are still measurable, and those have to do with contribution to community and what a community is about. Those things that we could measure have to do with soil quality. You heard Robert talk about that earlier. It's hard to translate soil quality into dollars and cents, but it makes a difference in terms of nutrition, and it makes a difference in terms of greenhouse gas sequestration. Much more about those things. I'm doing work with farmers around the country right now, looking at production practices to estimate greenhouse gas mitigation practices with farmers in Wisconsin, Georgia, and California. So USDA, and this is hard to get government to think about this, but we need to think about metrics that aren't reduced solely to dollars and cents. I think if we did that, then we would make much more room for women and BIPOC farmers who care for more than just dollars and cents, who care about the multiple dimensions that community represents.
I I agree with that, but for me, it's like helping out with the NRCS right now is one of the ways that I can better help out with some of the programs and stuff that I do, and I'm looking at trying to help create more farmers. It's one of those programs is the Eclipse program, which helps out with doing soil preservations and marshlands and just preserving soil, preserving irrigation and stuff like that. That helps out keeping this land and stuff, so from depleting. Plus, to give out different grants and stuff to help out with that. But there's more that can be done, and there's like ceilings. There's only so much money you can make out, that you can get out of doing those programs. So I believe what Alfonso was saying, there's a lot more that can be done, and a lot of that has to be done with dollars and cents to be able to make decisions on what you can really do and help out. So that's basically where I'm at with it all. So those policies that need to be changed that can help people of color also.
And one final question from Hannah, and she asks, what would you say are good skills to develop in order to work in food systems sustainability?
Boy, that's a great question, Hannah. So, oh my goodness. Email me in a week and I'll hire you in my lab. I have a dozen students, PhD, masters, and undergraduates who work for me, who are doing just what you're. So, what are some good skills? So, in this class that I'm teaching next semester, one of the things I'm going to emphasize is data science and data visualization, because it's very important. I'm a scientist, but I'm also a storyteller, and I think it's very important that we make points, even scientific points, in ways that really resonate with people. And so, data science, data visualization, graphical storytelling. Those are all very important skills that I think are fungible. They're useful in a variety of professions, food among them. In terms of the specifics of farming or food systems, I would really recommend trying to get an internship with one of the local farms. There's a number of CSAs and Troy Gardens, number of internship opportunities. FH King, one of the student farms on campus. There's a number of opportunities to get your hands dirty, and there's nothing like getting your hands dirty. It isn't the end of the day if you don't. I can tell you I've had a number of students over the years who've studied food systems with me, PhD, masters, and undergraduates that had no interest in actually farming. They were interested in law. They were interested in economic analysis. They were interested in the politics of it. They were interested in community development aspects. They were interested in the design of markets. They were in lots of ways to go forward. I think I'll stop there and come back to it maybe if one of the things that y'all should feel free, those of you who are students, well, any of you, it doesn't matter to me what you do. If you think I can be supportive of you, you should send me an email. But don't expect me to reply for about a week because I've got a huge grant, $20 million National Science Foundation grant. So food, right? Here. So what kind of food training? Ohio State University is going to lead a National Science Foundation grant for artificial intelligence and cyber infrastructure to create an institute for AI and CI that enables food systems, biodiversity, and precision agriculture. Those are the use cases for this $20 million operation. I'm leading the group from Wisconsin. Another $20 million NSF grant that New Mexico State University is establishing to create an engineering research center. What are the use cases? Food, cold chain preservation, food production and processing practices that are more sustainable, distribution and direct market activities that enable emergency food, quicker responses to COVID pandemics. So, to try and answer your question, there are a number of skills. There are a number of important skills that can make a way in the future of food that we're headed towards. Okay? All right, I'll be quiet now. Sorry.
Well,
by the way, neither of those grants will get funded, okay? But if they are, let me tell you what, I'm going to hire about 17 people.
Well, that's pretty good. I wish I was there with you. But anyway, I think that I'm a little bit more down to earth with this. I think that if you're going to want to get into something like this, and you need to get your hands into the ground and get grounded. I call it getting groundation. Touching that soil, feeling it. It's where the ancestors are. So I think that if you can grasp that and and feel that, this might be where you might want to be able to at least start. Then from that point on, it's determination of where you want to go with it. I decided that I wanted to do with youth and with felons, and that's where I think that where it helps me to find out where I want to be in this. So I think, but it started off with me putting my hands in that soil and finding out where I was at with it, because I always tell anybody who wants to be a farmer, I said, come work with me about a week. If you really want to be a farmer, come work with me about a week. And we'll see if you still want to do that after a week. So that's how I think, is that you need to get grounded. And then from that point on, then make your decision where you want to go with it after that. There's lots of opportunities out here, It may not that you may not want to play around in the soil like me or Alfonso or some other farmers. Maybe you might want to be able to take what people grow and make sure it gets to the people who need it. There's so many opportunities. Pick one, after you get grounded. Thank you.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us. And thank you to all the audience members for joining us this evening as well. Thanks to the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies and the Facilities Planning and Management, which are both administrative homes for the Office of Sustainability. As a reminder, this is the third event of our new series hosted by the Social Sustainability Coalition. And our next event will be held in January, and our theme for that event will be LGBTQ plus BIPOC and the environment. Make sure to follow us on social media at SustainEW to stay up to date about future themes and guest panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Good night. Yep.
And good night, folks.